Welcome to Location. In this series of videos, we will explore the fascinating physical world of Harold Lloyd, the so-called third genius of silent film. The sheer number of films he appeared in is staggering, portraying a unique variety of personas, from wimpy to conniving to adoring to being your worst enemy. In the early 1920s, Harold Lloyd audiences were amazed by his fearless personality, seemingly risking his life, scaring everyone. His so-called thrill pictures were the essence of his popularity. All of this was carefully planned, though, for maximum effect. No longer is there a fixed stage or set. Things are moved about, which caused some confusion to the viewer. Thus, the actual locations become even more interesting. Harold Lloyd loved downtown Los Angeles, partly because director Hal Roach was here to help. Their innovative ideas transformed the stagnant landscape, as would be seen later in the Roach-produced Laurel and Hardy and Little Rascals. In this episode, we'll look at the 1930 Feet First, a very long movie at 90 minutes, but as with the other thrill pictures, the best is saved for last. In this case, Harold's ascent up the outside of a tall building, of course in downtown Los Angeles. To the average viewer, this would seem enough to enjoy the movie. But where was this building? Does it still exist today? How was the ascent carried out? We'll look at some clues in a minute. The plot involves Harold Horn, a wannabe shoe salesman working for the Tanner Shoe Company. The store was located in Honolulu, Hawaii. But wait, there is sound. You can hear Harold's voice. This turned off some of his fans, having preferred his silent personality. Remember, this is 1930, the dawn of the talkies. Let's listen in.
Tanner shoes. We must live up to our slogan. The world walks on Tanner shoes. Now, you're my manager down here, and you've got to put this store over. And furthermore, don't talk back to me.
But I didn't say anything. I was only thinking...
Don't even think back to me. I won't have it. You're here to sell shoes, not to think. And if I don't see some results when I get back here on my next trip, you're fired. Now, do you understand me? You're fired. Give me a match. Never mind, I'll light it myself.
Come again soon. Hope you'll be delighted.
There you are.
Sets your foot off beautifully. Now that's the 4A, for what we call the perfect model. What is it? Oh, why, madam, the leather The leather in the Tanner shoe is made from the hides of contented cows. Now, I think they're very becoming. What do you think?
I think you'd better cut out this tomfoolery. Go up front and help trim that window.
Yes, sir. I was just practicing to be a salesman, Mr. Endicott.
You'll never make a salesman. Salesmanship is 98% personality, and that's something you haven't got.
Oh, yes, I have. Look.
Ah, that's not personality, that's stupidity. Get up front and help Williams trim that window.
Yes.
It was very nice on the
Yes, it looks smart, too. You know, it's a 4A for what we call the perfect foot. Notice how snug it fits? And I have a new sport model I'd like to show you.
I'd like very much.
You pardon me a minute?
First of all, let's look at our mystery location. It is called the 9th and Broadway building in downtown Los Angeles. Beyond it is the Orpheum Theater, built only a few years earlier. Notice the Davidson's Good Food sign. This will be a key identifying element later on. Here is an image from 1939 of the same intersection. Really classy cars, too. Notice the double set of windows. Between each set is a double decoration. This repeats as you get higher. This building still exists today. Harold is in a bag unloaded onto a platform, which is being raised up the building's side. But what you see here is an attempt to look like the front entrance. There are definite clues to prove this is all fake. Let's go back to the previous close-up. Beyond Good Food and the store next to it is the main entrance. It is very tall, with a point at the top. But in the movie, this is very short, with a decorative stub above the opening. Also notice behind Harold on the board the triangular horizontal pattern. These two clues begin at the building directly across the street, called the Eastern Columbia, built at the same time by the same architect. So use your imagination. Okay, now back to this image. The real 9th and Broadway building had no window grating that could be seen anyway. Also, look closely at the wall decoration above Harold's sack. This intricate pattern shows noticeable round bumps protruding outward. Here's a close-up of the bumps. Now, compare this to the actual building. No bumps at all. The overall pattern is very similar, but not good enough. In other words, this opening scene is a grand illusion. Oh well. Alas, more clues. Behind the truck panel, on the right side of the entrance to the building, are two signs. One says Triangle Building. The other says Post Office Substation Number 4. The substation did exist, but at another location on Spring Street. The key element here is the Triangle Building. This would literally mean a three-sided structure, which would be odd to begin with. But it just so happens that 1.5 blocks south of 9th and Broadway was indeed such a building, housing the Los Angeles Investment Company at 1016 South Broadway. Here we look towards the corner of Olympic and Broadway, 1 block south of Harold's building. Below the word Homes is 1016 South Broadway, the triangular model. This is from 1926, 4 years before Feet First. This wide-angle view of the neighborhood, with the three-sided building off to the right, is great, simply for the classic cars. And a closer look. And on the street in 1939. Now let's go to the corner itself. This is it, folks. This is where Broadway splits from 1923 and 1926 and 1929. Note on the left is United Artists Theater, the Texaco Tower, and beyond that, the Eastern Columbia Building. Directly across the street is Harold's Building. I think it is about time to begin Harold's journey up the building. We begin on the board. He is still wrapped up in the sack. Now remember what the building is supposed to look like. In this view we see Broadway on the left and 9th Street on the right. The climb is up the Broadway corner of the building. Keep in mind the essential alternating pattern of double window versus double decoration. As you go up, this changes toward the top, and the pattern at the bottom is different. We are now looking from across Broadway at the Eastern Columbia Building. Harold is still in the sack, but free of the board. But notice the insertion of the original bottom bump pattern in place of the windows, above him and below him under the board. The result is 3 patterns together, and the awning below them. Here's another view after he escapes from the sack, clearly showing the added panels. Now notice what you can of the detail of the decoration below the double windows. Here's a close-up. Okay? The vertical leaf pattern with the horizontal S stem. This is probably the best view of what is really going on. The Broadway side has the extra panels. The 9th Street side does not. Also, these shots show Harvey Perry filling in for Harold Lloyd, because a real stuntman was needed. This is a fabulous photo. It was taken on top of another huge, almost 3-sided building at 11th and Broadway. You are looking down on Olympic, which is the same as 10th Street. Notice on the left the long vertical United Artists sign. Beyond it is Texaco, and beyond that is the Eastern Columbia Tower. Directly across the street, to the right, is what should be familiar by now. It's Harold's Building, with the distinctive double window corner. Now for the details. We are obviously up in the air. We are supposedly at Harold's Building, but the logic stops here. First of all, this is an imitation set, built on top of what we call the Triangle Building, where Broadway splits, at Olympic Boulevard. The diverging trolley tracks give this away. And notice in the background the United Artists and Texaco vertical signs, as in our fabulous photo earlier. For the set itself, it's all baloney. The real building has no vertical knotted design on the wall. Note the vertical leaf pattern with the bump pattern insert directly below. Okay, let's see how sharp your eyes are. This leaf panel is just as phony as the bump panel. Note the vertical bars on either side of the leaf. The original is smooth. Even the bottom is different. But check out the background. Beyond the Texaco sign is the remarkable Eastern Columbia Building with the wooden crown. Okay, let's see. Yes, we are much higher, and indeed closer to the corner of 9th and Broadway. Straight away, we see the base of the Eastern Columbia Building. But this set is even more confusing. Notice that the leaf pattern is itself repeated. So we have leaf, leaf, bump. Here's an excellent view of the leaf panels. Proving we're closer and higher, see the clear Texaco sign top. Now wait a minute. What happened? Where are we? Harold is still climbing, but the background is clearly different. No more Eastern Columbia building at all. We are even higher in the air, that is for sure. There is only one way to get this view. We are now at the corner of 8th Street and Spring Street, 1 block east of Broadway. This is Spring Street, one of the oldest areas of Los Angeles. Most of the buildings adhere to a strict similar height code, and most were constructed before 1920. The tall building in the center right is the Great Republic Life Building, 756 South Spring Street. It looks imposing from a block farther east on Main. From the front it looks like this. Please don't confuse this with another downtown building, commonly mistaken for a different film. A third set was constructed on the Spring Street Tower to accommodate Harold's final ascent. This is an amusing photo, when the bank on the ground floor closed in 1931. Okay, let's see how sharp you are. Here we see the 1929 listing for the Great Republic Life Building at 756 South Spring Street. Die-hard Harold Lloyd fans should recognize at least 3 other listings associated with his films. Think about it. Amazing. Now, back to our 1926 photo of Spring Street, looking north from 8th Street. Look at the top of the tallest building on the left. It says I.N. Van Nuys Building. And on the right, we see Corporation Office Building. Beyond that is Financial Center Building. Also note the Hotel Jovita in the center. Okay, check this out. Now, in 1930, the hotel is called Hotel Haven, but the other details remain the same, proving where we are. Part of Harold's climb involves trying to get inside the building, but look beyond him at the background. This is a bit later, as he is going to reach for the hose. The view out the window tells a lot. Remember, we are on the corner of 8th and Spring Street, 1 block east of Broadway. What you see here is the Tower Theater, and beyond it, across the street, is the May Company Building, formerly known as Hamburgers Department Store. In other words, 8th and Broadway. Here is a more proper view of the Tower Theater from 1928. Our building is off to the left, out of the picture. Again, this is Harvey Perry, the stuntman, filling in for Harold, hanging on to the hose. Behind him is the leaf bump leaf pattern sequence. Now notice the wide vertical sections on either side of the windows. They are very smooth, aren't they? Okay, this is a great shot. Looking down, we see the remainder of the Good Food awning, shown earlier, proving this is all for real. Harvey is hanging from the hose, but notice on the right the building vertical section. You can just make out a decorative insert. Also notice the pattern just above the hose is a totally different version than we've seen so far. Here's the real thing. The leaf pattern decoration is finally changed. Here's a detail. This building is so complicated. Now back to the set, on top of 8th and Spring. We see that small insert clearly on the left and right. But to further confuse you, this set uses an even different pattern sequence. No, not the new decoration we just saw, but now it's leaf, bump, bump. All phony, of course. At least we have Harold on the hose. Listen, all this time poor Harold has been somewhere near the board, being pulled up the building's side by these two men. Be careful what you see here. There is a lot to notice. First of all, we are supposed to be at the building top, right? You can see one of the two horizontal wood pieces supporting the guy wires for the board, being pulled by the two men. It is held in place with sandbags. Also, the rectangular paint cans next to it. Remember, this is a set. Compare this to the actual appearance. Not a bad job, but not convincing either. Oh well. Now, back to this scene. Behind the men is a wall, partially to hide where we really are. Beyond the wall, center left, is a dome with a spire. Beyond that is a black rectangular sign with the white lettering. Got it? Let's get our bearings here. The dome belongs to the RKO Theater at the corner of 8th and Hill Street, 1 block west of Broadway. The sign says Commercial Exchange Building, 1 block farther west on Olive Street. The whole point is we are looking to the west. Here is an aerial view for clarification. Note the RKO Theater dome, and to the left, the upper extension of that large building, which has the sign on it. Now look to the far left. You see the long vertical sign which says Commercial Exchange. Like this. Of course, Harold does actually make it to the top, of the set anyway. Note where we are. Hotel Cecil is prominent in the background. We are looking northeast. We see the other wooden piece now, next to the round paint can. Here's the reference photo, on the right side. But he falls onto the roof and inhales the fumes from an open can of ether. He is in a daze and tries to get up. During this process, the background totally changes. Where's the Hotel Cecil? He still has not gotten on his feet yet. And when he does, he looks down, sees how high he is, and readjusts himself on the ledge. Here is a better view. After he does, the Hotel Cecil is back. A few frames later, while still standing, the new background reappears. Notice the addition of a brush next to the can of ether. Everything had to be redone on the other side of the set, which faces west, towards the Tower Theater. This is crazy. He is probably thinking, at this point, give me a break, okay? Here is a publicity photo of Harold on the wooden piece. The large white area below him, to the right, has mattresses in case he falls. Okay, back to our ledge. Unfortunately for Harold, he wanders onto the roof, only to encounter the two workmen. Back he goes to the ledge, and over. The scene below is curious. Not only the 5 white dots, which I suppose is a lamppost, but no good food awning. This and the following shot were ingeniously composed. Alas, back on the ground. Notice the Triangle Building sign, and the U.S. Post Office sign below it. And the rest is history, I guess, right? Not quite yet. He looks up and sees this clock. The ALY should be familiar to students of the 1920s. This is the Bank of Italy, which preceded Bank of America. Therefore, the branch locations were everywhere. Our movie was set at 9th and Broadway, downtown Los Angeles, remember? But this sign is nowhere near here. The building in the background gives the secret away. It is called the First National Bank Building of Hollywood. It started like this in 1927. Love that horse and buggy. Once finished, it originally looked like this. Notice on the right side of the photo, above the sign Drugs, another sign saying Federal Bank. The sign itself is exactly the same as our sample image. It was attached to the side of an existing apartment building. Several years later, the official full-size building was erected. Now look across the street. To the right, we see the apartment building again, but now the sign says Bank of Italy. At the time of our movie, additional structures were built, so our sample photo is even more accurate. So where was this intersection anyway? Bank of Italy, 6780 Hollywood Boulevard, at the corner of Highland. This classic photo from 1930 shows the huge First National Bank building in the distance. In the lower left corner is Grauman's Chinese Theater. Okay, let us continue on our journey. So far, we have explored the world of Harold Lloyd, as he saw it in 1930. Los Angeles as a city appeared like this, just everywhere. The vertical north-south streets have names, while the horizontal east-west streets are numbered. In the upper right, we see Los Angeles City Hall, built in 1928. It is bounded by Spring Street on the left and Main Street on the right. Now, follow these two streets southward until they converge in a point. This is just north of 9th Street. Go one block to the west or left, and we are at 9th and Broadway, the major thoroughfare in Los Angeles downtown. On the left, we see a building under construction. It is the now familiar Eastern Columbia building. Directly across Broadway is the 9th and Broadway building, where Feet First was filmed. Amazing! But of course, this was in 1930. What about today? Yes, folks, it is still here. 9th and Broadway, downtown Los Angeles. And across the street, the massive Eastern Columbia building. Let's take a look at the extreme detail of this green giant. Note the influence on the 9th and Broadway building sets. And here, on the right, the information we needed. The sign today on our building, of course, is genuine. Back then, it said the Triangle Building. Before we go on, let's check out a curiosity. Remember, both buildings were constructed in 1930 by the same architect. The further similarities are amazing. Notice the darker panels on the 9th and Broadway building as they alternate with windows. Up close, they look like this. Note the middle one has a little opening in the center. Okay, let's check across the street at the Eastern Building. Again, sets of dark panels, alternating with windows. What goes on here? Lack of imagination? A different design. But check out the middle, with another little opening. Okay, now back to our building. Doesn't this look like a person's face? The arches with the eyes, the nose, the mouth and chin? Now keep this in mind as we venture across 9th Street to yet another building, 1/4 block away. Look up. What do we see? A little face. A total coincidence, I guess. But it is still amazing. Wow. Ah, that fabulous photo. Here's the update. Not much has changed. We are 1 block south of 9th Street at Olympic Boulevard and Broadway. At the split. Remember the split? Well, if I turn around, we see at the lower left the real split. This is where the original three-sided, what we called the triangle building, stood. In the distance, on the right, is still the original Herald Examiner building, as noted in our earlier reference. Here's another perspective seen from 9th and Hill, looking toward Broadway. Remember, the initial climb was from the Triangle building, and the second was from the JAG building. For the third and final segment, we have to go to 8th and Spring Street, remember? The tall structure on the right is 756 South Spring, the Great Republic building. As I mentioned, Spring Street is one of the oldest parts of downtown Los Angeles. Again, note the similar height buildings. Last, the Tower Theater. What a relic! You can just barely make out Newsreel Theater on the sign, used during the Korean War years. Such is this image from 1951. Note on the marquee, Korea Atrocities. This is a great photo of Broadway just north of the Tower Theater in 1942. Notice the original Newsreel Theater and the message on the marquee. Wow! Remember when Harold arrived at the top of the building? In the background was the Hotel Cecil. Well, it is still there today, further proving where we are. Before we vacate this neighborhood, we mustn't forget Harold Lloyd was a big deal, even in this 1928 view of what was showing at the Rialto Theater. You got it, Harold Lloyd in Speedy! As we leave the City of Angels, let's let our hero celebrate the culmination of our joint efforts in Feet First.
Help! Help me! Hey! Hurry, somebody! Help!
I think it was wonderful the way you figured how to get that vid here by plane.
Oh, well, that was mostly luck.
No, it wasn't. It was because you stuck to it and made good.
Stuck to it. Sticking to it, huh? That's it. Sticking. Wait a minute. Huh. Sticking, huh? Oh!